101, the basic agenda is we are going to do big data intro, then Hadoop intro and typical Hadoop usage and MapReduce demo. So let's get started. Big data introduction. So first let's try to understand what data is and what big data is, right? So data is, if you look at the bottom of the pyramid, we are basically looking at the beginning of the computers. The data is stored basically in the file systems, and also it was stored in large mainframes. Even there is no structure. It's basically more of a file system type storage. And as the computing evolved and as data evolved, the relational databases were created around 25 to 30 years ago, and they have been extremely successful. And then with the advent of the internet, there is heavy data distribution started happening. So you have data all over the geography, and you needed to integrate, you need to work with this data seamlessly. So you had distributed data concepts that came up. In distributed data, you have the data in multiple geographies, multiple data centers, and in multiple clusters, and it could be in relational or regular format. Now, fast forward, now we are talking about big data. It's, when I say big data, it's really, really big data. So let's take a look at what big data is, right? Big data primarily is described with 3 V's: volume, variety, and velocity. When we say volume, it's the amount of data that is coming in, I would say, on a minute by minute and even second by second basis. And the variety of data, like different types of data that is coming in from various types of sources, and the velocity, the speed at which this data is coming in, right? So let's take a look at the circle here. So in which talks about the types of data and various types of data. So the top one is geodata. Geodata is basically geographic data. Whenever you are going around with your mobile phones, or your geodata is captured, and with now with the, especially with the mobile technology, wherever you go, the geodata is sent out every, I don't know, 5 seconds, right? If you keep your mobile on, your data, the geodata is being transmitted to the network. Culture data, and when you say culture, it's typically we are talking about a social culture explosion. You have Facebooks, Twitters, which are creating thousands and thousands of messages per second. So it's like almost a few terabytes of data getting accumulated on a month-to-month basis. Just with Facebook, it accumulates a few terabytes of data per month. And now the science. So there is with the computing power, there's an explosion in science. Like you have the gene sequencing, now you have the brain decoding going on, and you have the data coming from the cosmos, from the satellites that are out there, and the data that is coming in is unbelievably large, and for example, it's expected that about 40 terabytes of data comes through satellites every day. And with the increase in power of the telescopes, you have the amount of data that is collected on a daily basis is increasing, and you have data from the oceans. You have sensors all over the world where you put where you get the data from the oceans. Then financial and statistics. So it's, you see the Wall Street, and it's just you look at any indexes, there is a hyper activity going on, and there is tremendous amount of transactions, financial transactions going on, and the related statistics that are getting generated. And it's just not the Wall Street, but in general, if you look at the e-commerce, mobile commerce, banking, and anywhere there is money involved, there is data that is collected. And weather. and environment. So if you have to look at weather and environment, you see the weather data. You depend on weather data on a daily basis. If you have a mobile, you have a weather app, you are getting that data. And whenever there is this weather is constantly monitored across the world and simulated on a day-to-day basis. And environment. So if you have right now there are millions and millions of sensors that are deployed across the world in war zones to detect the air quality, and in conflict zones to detect the water quality, and water, like even probably just in your neighborhood water pond where you get your water from, there are water quality sensors. At your home, there are increasing number of sensors that are getting deployed, and right now almost every house electricity is automatically sent through the sensors. And now the transportation. So whenever you are going by the car, you take any type of transportation, there is a GPS device or some type of sensors involved, and there is increasingly more artificial intelligence that is getting embedded in your transportation system. So the big data is, as you can see, it's a lot of variety. And this data that is coming in, when we look at variety, you can also call it as structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data. Structured data is more like your regular relational database. You have some structure to it, and semi-structured is if you are going and collecting data on your websites, user activities. So there is some structure to it, but may not be that clear, and no structure. Like for example, you are multimedia, and more and more types of data that are getting generated, right? So the big data is really, really big, and it's a fact, and as a matter of fact, it's increasing on a day-to-day basis.